What is going on, Colts Nation, and welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Your guys, Cody and Derek, as always. And guys, we are rounding out the two-part series here, talking about the strengths and weaknesses of the Indianapolis Colts. We've already touched on the strengths of this team, looking forward into the 2025 season. Now we are going to talk about some of the weaknesses for the Colts, some of the things that might hold the Colts back from being a really good team this year. So we're going to touch on those here. But if you haven't already, go check out the strengths one because we definitely talked about some good stuff there. But yeah, we'll start here, Derek, with the first and I think the most obvious one that all eyes are going to be on. It's the uncertainty at quarterback. I mean, we all know, like, the quarterback position, that is going to either make or break this team this year. I don't care how good some of the strengths are. If quarterback's in the weaknesses, there's definitely a lot that's going to be on the line this year. And we've talked about it already. Like, if your quarterback does not figure it out, whichever quarterback it is, if it's not figured out and your quarterback plays as bad or it's still not up to standard this year, I mean, Derek, there's going to be a lot of changes this coming off season for sure, because quarterback's just that important. Whether it's Anthony Richardson, whether it's Daniel Jones, let's face it, both were awful last year. And you need a massive jump from whoever is your starter this year.
Yep, no doubt. The engine that makes the NFL team go is definitely the quarterback. There's been very few times in the history of the NFL where the quarterback was not the main reason behind the team making the Super Bowl and winning, because it's probably the most important position in all of sports. There's one guy that is supposed to know everything that's going on the field at one particular time. And if you're incapable of doing that and you're incapable of making good throws and even being competent, then it becomes a giant issue. And that is ultimately going to be the thing. And, we've said it a bunch of times this offseason. We'll continue to say it a bunch of times throughout this offseason. Doesn't matter what Ballard does to fix this roster. He can make this the Denver Broncos defense and all these other things, but there may not be a chance for the Indianapolis Colts to make the playoffs or go to the Super Bowl if our quarterback can't, throw the football down the field and, get 200 plus passing yards in 85% of his games and, has as many turnovers as he does touchdowns. It just can't work that way, right? So we need to see a jump. And, that is ultimately going to be what determines the success of this team, is going to be the quarterback play.
Absolutely. It's bad. I said that in an earlier episode, but it's bad when you're saying if your quarterback can hit like high 50s completion percentage wise, you're feeling pretty good. Like, we're to that point. That's not even the standard that it should be, but that's how bad it's been, man, for the quarterback position, especially last year. So whoever it is calling the shots, whoever it is making the decisions at the quarterback position, they got to be like better tenfold from where they were last year. I mean, heck, we saw what the Colts did even with like average quarterback play in 2023. So if you can at least even get average quarterback play, I think this team's more talented than they were in 2023. So if you can do that, I do believe that you have an opportunity here to potentially go some places you haven't gone in a while. But again, it's all going to come down to that. But when you're continuing on, Derek, looking at some of the weaknesses here for this Indianapolis Colts team, I kind of look at like how the Colts approached this draft and, some of the things they did not address. And I think when you look at it, there's definitely some positions that we've been asking questions about, like, what is like, where's the depth going to come from when it comes to the Colts offensive line? That's one I've definitely asked myself. Like, we obviously have an idea who's going to be your starting right guard, but I don't know about you, Derek, but I have a little bit of a concern on like maybe some quality depth in the interior, especially at right guard, because I don't really know outside of Matt Gonsalves who would be the next guy up per se right now. And is that a position that you're willing to just give to him?
I'm assuming you say it's Danny Pinter, I'd assume. But on most places, if you ask them who the number 2 right guard is, it's Dalton Tucker. Right. And I mean, Cody, nobody wants to see Dalton Tucker out there doing it. I mean, I like Dalton Tucker as a player. I like him that, he's a good dude, but, we saw, I mean, obviously we saw what he did in the preseason. He was beaten up on preseason competition easy, but that's just preseason. That's your second stringers, your third stringers, maybe even your fourth stringers. So he wasn't facing these interior defensive linemen who are gods of the football field. And the few times that he did, he looked terrible. So I mean, you don't want that out there behind you if Matt Gonsalves is going to be the guy, especially since we were talking about if Matt Gonsalves was going to stay at tackle or not. Sure, might have a new swing tackle in Jalen Travis, but you're right. You don't. The only quality interior depth that you have right now is Danny Pinter, and I don't think a lot of people want Danny Pinter as a guard. To be completely honest with you, Cody. So
No,
that is a thing that what
he was benched, I believe. He was started at guard and got benched.
Yeah,
in
I mean
2022.
he had to be. He wasn't filling the hole really well. I mean he eventually had to be at center a little bit because Wesley French was out for the year. Tanner Bortolini went out for a little bit in one game, so Danny Pinter had to take over there. But that's primarily where Danny Pinter should be if he's going to be. It should be at center, where it's a little bit easier for a player with his skill set to be able to handle. But for right guard, you're right. The Colts definitely still need to consider their options there.
For sure. I mean, depth is so important. I mean, we've seen it. Like, a lack of depth can kill you if you don't have a guy that can step up and play even adequate football for you. Again, I will say this. Like, as much as we like to rag on Dalton Tucker, like, he was an undrafted free agent, so maybe in year 2 he can at least be serviceable. We'll have to see. But anyway, continuing on to talk about some other weaknesses for this team. Derek, when I kind of look at their defense, I mean, it's more of the same when it comes to some questions at depth. I point to potentially the interior of that defensive line. Like, I know you brought in Neville Gallimore. I know you drafted Tim Smith, but I honestly expected the Colts to do something a little bit more when it comes to a depth standpoint, because we know, like, DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart, as great as they are, the fact is they're not getting any younger. We saw how bad it was a year ago when they had to miss any sort of time. So I guess I just expected some sort of investment, a little bit more than what we actually got here for the Colts in that defensive interior. I mean, we talked about the edge and how many guys are at the edge. So who knows? Maybe a guy can potentially slide inside that we're not thinking about. But when you're purely looking at it right now, I do have questions on, like, who is going to be kind of that primary guy there as that third guy, that first rotational guy up, if you needed to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's bad on the interior behind it. I mean, Adetomiwa, he was not good in run defense last year. Neville Gallimore, notoriously bad for interior defensive line help in the run. Eric Johnson, the second, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but the last few years, he was one of the worst defensive players that the Colts have had over the last 2 years. They cut him and then brought him back. And then Tim Smith, who you draft in the 6th round to potentially be another guy to compete for that spot. I mean, yeah, Cody, they don't have anyone on the interior outside of Grover and DeForest to be able to stop the run. I mean, they don't have anyone, and it's pretty bad. I mean, I don't know why Ballard has it. Like we said in the other video, like I don't know what it is about certain positions where Ballard knows that it's going to be an issue, yet somehow, some way they don't address it. I just don't. I don't get it. I don't know if they're just waiting until the end of training camp to see if they can find some hidden gem player that gets cut before camp ends, or I don't know. But like, I mean, it's just odd that these are the players that you expect to be your defensive interior, especially given just how bad half of these guys were last year.
Yeah, and maybe there's a guy they truly believe can step into that role, but I just don't like to go based off of like hope at this point for that. Like I would like to have some guy that's a little bit more proven. Add some sort of vet in there, I think would make us feel a whole lot better about this group. But again, there's still some time. Colts, we've seen them add players late, so who knows? But right now, certainly a concern. And I really have two other positions, and purely from a depth standpoint here, Derek. And again, linebacker is an interesting one because I do have questions on linebacker, but also I understand the fact that you're going to be playing a lot more defensive backs on the field. You're going to have a lot more 5, 6 guys out there, and is definitely going to play a factor. You're going to ask your linebackers to do a lot less in coverage this year, which I think is definitely a good thing. But you lost DJ Speed, you lost Grant Stewart, and you really didn't do anything to bring anybody else in of note. So yes, I understand that you're going to be playing less linebackers, but also I would have liked to see at least one guy brought in some capacity because you lost two guys that played significant roles for you last year on the field and also on special teams. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no doubt, man. I mean, it's going to be interesting for this linebacker unit, and I know you had your feelings about Carlisle and how we kind of view him. I think you and I view him a little bit differently. I have a lot more confidence in Carlisle, I believe, than you do. Not saying you don't have confidence in him, but obviously I feel as though he's more ready to step into that role than maybe you believe. But yeah, I mean, outside of Alubi being, the third linebacker, which in fairness, I like Alubi as a third linebacker. Outside of that, you're right. You don't have a lot of other guys that are going to be competing. Now, I will say Hunter Wohler being drafted in the 7th round, obviously they're expected to move him to linebacker. But I mean, Cody, did you see the report that they're going to train him as a safety first?
Yeah.
And as they transition him to linebacker, I don't understand the point of that. I don't know. Maybe they just want him to be able to look at things a certain way in the NFL. I'm not sure. It just doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to me personally.
No, I was kind of like, okay, like, why don't you just decide, like, is he going to be a safety? Is he going to be a linebacker? What's going to be the deal there? Because, like, you didn't do that with Jalen Carlisle. He was immediately a linebacker. So it's a little bit fascinating there on how they're approaching that. But yeah, I think that also leads into the last one, like the safety position. Is Hunter Wohler a safety? Is he a linebacker? We don't know. But regardless, one of these two positions, unless Hunter Wohler's playing both, one of these two positions, you're certainly, and again, he's a 7th round pick as well. So
Right.
there's no guarantee he makes an impact. So yeah, you definitely have some questions at safety. Like you have your two starters, but again, it's a big question mark. Like who's going to be that third safety? Is it going to be Hunter Wohler? Is it going to be somebody else on your roster? I mean, there's just some questions on some depth here. And again, like we talked about with corner, how you have so many guys. Is there a guy that can potentially go and slide into that third safety spot that we're not thinking about right now? Or, how do the Colts approach that? I'm just so curious on that because, as I think about it right now, you really are one injury away from really not really having anybody that can step into a role. So I don't
Yeah,
know. It's just weird.
it's bad. It's bad in the depth of the secondary right now, for at least the safeties. You're right. I mean, Bynum and Cross, really love them both. But you're right. Like, if one of those guys gets injured, I mean, who the heck do you have? Daniel
Yeah.
Scott, who you have no idea how good or bad he is because he's never played a minute. He's never played a minute in his first few years in the NFL, Cody, because he gets injured before training camp comes around every single year so far. And then Rodney Thomas, again, had a phenomenal rookie year. And then from that point, just dropped. I mean, he hit that sophomore slump and it hit him hard and he never recovered. So I don't know what to expect from this safety group. And it's again another one of those position groups where everyone's kind of sitting back expecting Ballard to make some kind of move during training camp in that spot. It certainly feels like you should, because you can't rely upon the two people that are your backups right now.
No, and obviously, ideally, they never see the field. But again, this is the NFL. You're playing 17 games. Attrition will happen. So you need to be prepared if and when that does happen at certain positions. So I don't know. Maybe they view one of these corners, like I said, as a guy that could play some safety. And maybe we'll see that as OTAs get underway, training camp gets underway. Maybe there's a player that's like on the back end of that safety room, but right, that corner room, that they believe, hey, maybe he could try some safety in this scheme, because there are some players that, the Colts obviously drafted with Gus Bradley in mind, and maybe Louis Anarumo, they view him differently. They're like, maybe in our scheme, some of your skills can be a little bit more like this. Like, we can utilize them a little bit better in this position as opposed to the position you're in. So I don't know the answer to that, but yeah, it's going to be fascinating nonetheless to see what the Colts do. But certainly some questions here when it comes to the Indianapolis Colts, and we'll just have to see. But guys, that'll do it for some of the weaknesses for the Indianapolis Colts. Again, really, Derek, just some depth. It's really like quarterback is the big one, and then just a lot of questions on depth right now for this team.
Pretty much, yeah. We'll see if Ballard, the good thing about that is, Ballard can right some of the wrongs of that by making a few more player acquisitions during the offseason still. Ultimately, though, the big question, we're just going to have to find out if Anthony Richardson, if that work in the offseason paid off or not.
Yep, we will. It could either be a really, really good season or another really long season. We'll have to see. And the thing that would stink is, I think this team, if you can get quarterback right, the thing is, I think this team has talent. I think they could definitely make some noise, but it's all going to come down to the most important position in, I think, sports, quarterback. So we'll have to see, guys, but let us know your thoughts here on some of the weaknesses for the Indianapolis Colts. Like we said already, if you haven't already, be sure to go check out our video on some of the strengths for the Indianapolis Colts. But let us know your thoughts on some of the weaknesses we brought up and any other weaknesses you would throw in as well. But guys, that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for tuning in. We greatly appreciate it. And as always, guys, go Colts.